the core thing to acknowledge as like a fundamental is to acknowledge that you have a target market. And inside that target market, you can break it into two categories: the people that are actively looking to buy that category or thing, and the people that aren't. In most categories, the people that are actually actively buying stuff is going to be somewhere between 1% and 3% of the entire market, which leaves 97 to 99% of the market that aren't actively buying. When you run a traditional like marketing lead gen playbook that a lot of the companies that are listening to this podcast probably still run, the only way to achieve the scale is to go and get all the people that are not in market, which then forces your sales team to try and sell to people that don't want to buy right now, which makes sales really fucking hard in today's day and age. It makes it really hard because buyers have so much available information. They want to do most of it on their own. If they're not interested in buying, why do they want to waste their time taking a 30-minute call with your sales team or trying to pick up a cold call or answer an email? They're going to just ignore it and move on. And so the two things that we need to focus on in marketing to make sales easier is, number one, we need to find who the 1% to 3% are that are buying right this second and get them in front of our sales team in a meeting. So that's one big thing, right? Google SEO, some companies are getting really creative with like account level intent data, mostly in software, but I see that moving to other industries. Affiliates type of thing. I think affiliates are pretty big in the insurance industry, so it's not ideal, but paying a VIG to get people that are actively buying can be a good deal. Just watch out, because if you build your whole business on that, over time, you're going to be in real trouble. So you got that type of stuff to find people that are actively buying and then get them in a meeting with your sales team to try and close them because they're looking to buy what you sell. Then we need to figure out, for the other 97 to 99% that aren't buying, what are the things that we're going to do to help educate them so at some point they consider buying? And that's really I think the core miss in most marketing strategies is looking at these as two separate groups and then looking at a majority of the market that isn't actively buying and marketing in a different way that isn't performance marketing, lead generation, cold calling, and using a new strategy and structure that involves dark social content that educates people at scale in a way that they want, asynchronously in their own time, in the native platforms that they already use, and then being able to, over time, have them consider your company or your category because of the work that you did. And it's a really interesting thing when you educate a market or even down to one person about something, and then they decide, hey, I really want to buy insurance. Susie's content taught me all about insurance. Who's the first person that she's going to call when she needs insurance? She's going to call Susie or Susie's company and be the first to consider. That doesn't mean that you're going to win the deal. If your product sucks, if your pricing isn't there, if it's more competitive, doesn't mean you're going to win every deal, but you have a leg up as opposed to being the third company that they're considering, that they just found on Google when they decided they wanted insurance.
So I'll tell you something. This has been an interesting thing that I've gone through over the course of the last year, because the group that I just had the conference for down in Key West is an online ecosystem that I built to train middle market producers how to sell more effectively, but we built a social network component into it. So essentially it's like a whole online ecosystem that's there. And I do post a lot of stuff that helps people who are technically my peers or competition, quick tips, tricks, whatever, to help them in their sales approach. And probably 6 or 7 months ago, I started getting 2 or 3 direct messages a month from CEOs and CFOs of who would be my end client that just said, hey, we're watching the stuff you put out. It's good. We're not getting that from our existing agent right now, and we want that. Do you write in our state, or do you have somebody who you teach to do things the way you do that writes in our state? We would love an introduction, because we're not getting what we want to get, and it seems like you've got it. And that just blows my mind, because the content was never developed for them. It was developed for producers to consume and then take that sound bite and go out and implement it and actually move the ball down the field a little bit. But it goes back to why I said the audience always ends up finding you in some way, shape, or form if you remain consistent, because that's actually my real audience for, my non-side hustle job.
And the acknowledgement is that most people don't have a go-to insurance company or agent. Yeah. They don't, right? I'm in the process of reevaluating. Someone else on my team is doing it, but we're doing it. We're reevaluating all our business insurance. The last time we bought business insurance, we were 10 people. So if somebody was out there, an insurance company, educating, making content for CEOs of here are all the things you got to look out for once you cross over to 8 figures, once you exceed 100 employees, whatever the milestones are, here are the new things you have to consider. And they showed me that, then they would be the first person that I consider. Instead, we're just using a broker to go and price shop everything. And so like,
yeah, that gets dangerous. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole with you, but that does get dangerous because you're captive to that one person to go out and hope that they know what they're doing and that they can find the right carriers with the right endorsements and are not missing exclusions and things. I mean, it's a complicated thing. And, you know, that's one of the things our industry struggles with by and large, more on the business to consumer side than the B2B side, but they're trying to get into B2B and haven't figured it out yet.
Yep.
And that's, you know, that's buying insurance online, quote, bind issue, get it done. But you leave that end user, you leave that client potentially with massive exposure that they have no idea about because they didn't go sit 200 hours to take an insurance licensing exam. They don't have professional designations that dive into different coverages and policy meet and all of that. It's just the inability to delay gratification. We decided we got our renewal. It's a little too high. I'm going to go do this right now. And Progressive and Geico are in your face on TV all the time. And that's where they go. I mean, we don't even get a phone call till they've already been to Progressive or Geico, which is interesting to me because all the studies that I've read say that the people in the millennial generation and the generation beyond them are really more interested in having a professional advisor because they don't know. And they readily admit that. I think it's probably my generation that's the one that's more culpable here because we don't want to admit what we don't know. And we think we have it all figured out. And in reality, we don't.
It's lack of awareness. Nobody knows you.
Yep.
Like that's what it is. If more people knew and trusted you and knew what you did, they would like, I don't want to be disrespectful here, but insurance is largely a commodity at this point.
No, dude, listen, you were preaching to the choir. I will tell you right now, insurance is the commoditized shuffling of paperwork. And when I'm in doing a deal, we're focusing on total cost of risk. We're talking about claims inside of deductible and self-retention layers that are out of pocket, or a business decided they're just going to go ahead and pay for that fender bender and not put it on their insurance because they think they're controlling rates. Certainly they do buy insurance for certain things, but at the end of the day, it's, do you have a return to work program for workers' comp to reduce the cost of injuries, which are affecting your experience modification factor and subsequently driving up rates? Sounds really technical, right? That's not something that the average consumer is going to really be able to understand. And you do have to get educational information out like that. But when I'm at the closing table, the insurance piece is represented as the funding mechanism for people to use cash they're already spending on a product to buy my value proposition, which is all of the stuff they need to control cost, but they're not going to go out and buy one off. So the tech stack that I have in my agency is extremely abnormal for an agency my size. We do about $4 million a year in revenue. That's a good sized agency to a lot, but it's not huge by any stretch. The average agency in the country, out of the 40,000 or so that are out there, are $500,000 or less in revenue. Just to give you some perspective, it's, you know, it's the people.
Yeah,
it's the people that we used to go into with our parents to have them do the annual review of insurance, and you'd sit in the lobby while the receptionist is smoking a cigarette. Like, I mean, that's what I grew up with. But you know, by and large, it's pretty uncommon if you're not a national player to go in with a suite of software products for claims management, certificate tracking, and all of the other things that we do, and give that away as part of the value proposition, knowing that we've been able to put that stuff in place in a way that is affordable and scalable. And that's how we've gotten to 4 million. I mean, we started 7 years ago, this July 1st. And I mean, the agency started in the dining room of my home that we converted to an office. And after 18 months moved in here where we're at now. But, you know, it's been a grind, man. And the content creation piece and just the consistency and making sure that it's good information is a grind in and of itself. I come from the grocery industry. I ran grocery stores for 10 years before I got into insurance when I was 30 years old. So I think one of the reasons I'm captivated by the dark social conversation is we lived in dark social. Like, that's what it was. It was, hey, you know, the conversation at the kid's birthday party, or you're sitting in the bleachers at Little League and people are like, man, did you go into that store? That place was filthy. Well, we just lost 6 people that were within earshot of hearing that had no way of measuring it. And I think it's kind of naive to think that that type of behavior went away just because we have social now. It's probably more prevalent than ever.
It has massive scale. Now, instead of just at the Little League game where 4 people hear about how your grocery store sucks, now someone's going to post that on Facebook and the whole town's going to know.
Right, exactly. It's crazy. And people use that as a weapon. Social's been weaponized by pissed off consumers to a certain degree. You don't see it.
Channel. Yeah, for sure. Mainly Twitter, but it happens in other places too.